Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I know I got a watch on and everything, and still can't remember if it's morning or afternoon. But I think more than anything, I don't need to have a real pressing concept of time unless I have a client meeting. Outside of that, my time is my own. And before I get too deep into this video, I'd like to just make the standard announcement. My name is Kyla P. Barnes. I am your financial chef and coach with Jean Glaze Art and Finance. My website is www.oneginglas.com. And that website mainly focuses on artistic expressions, market commentary, market trends, money management, coaching, as well as financial management as a whole under advisement. So this edition is going to be outside, if you can't tell. That's right. I am outside on another vacation. I found that it has been more beneficial to me to take mini vacations. So instead of like taking 7, 9 days off and paying for like lodging and food, maybe just taking 2 to 3 days at a time, I have found that flights are cheaper. I found that lodging is cheaper. I also found that like if I go to a city that has a park like Orlando, that the parks are less congested. So it's a win for me overall. During this episode here, I am going to cover the markets, what to look out for, how things are trending, and different things that you may have observed or not observed in the markets or in your portfolio. So, I love being outside the park. I love it. So, what's been happening? What's been happening is that the R word is still on deck for a recession, but we have yet to. My beer can is wobbling. I don't want to be one of those litterers. Please don't litter. This is actually a pretty good can too of beer, if you're into beers. But it's by New Belgium, 1985 IPA. So, if you've been tracking and trending, that's right, I successfully crushed a can. You would have noticed that there has been many events that occur throughout the year. Of course, we had the biggest one occurring in March with securing the financials related to some of the smaller and regional banks. However, that has since significantly became a third or fourth page news item. While that still is a topic on deck right now, it's not as pressing because the federal government at the end of May, top of June, did suspend the debt ceiling. So that means that the U.S. is still able to pay its current bills as well as bills that they deem are mandatory. That also means that the Federal Reserve is put in a precarious position for OPEC, one, saying that they're going to be cutting production, which means that the commodity price is likely going to rise over the course of the year. And then there's also the government suspending the debt ceiling, which means that they can't, at any point in time, whatever they deem to be mandatory spending, they can just essentially go for it. Well, that's not necessarily the solution for reducing the deficit. I'm sure that that may have crossed your mind, but that's not exactly the way that we get to having lower bills, opening up our checkbook with an infinite amount of things that we can spend money on. So that's something to be of concern. Right now, the markets are all up, surprisingly. Crude, I think, is one of the larger commodities that is dragging. I think that I saw that it was down by like 9.5%, and this would have been probably before 2:30 p.m. today. The Nasdaq earlier was up 26%. The S&P earlier was up 9%, and the Dow was up 2%. Just 4 days ago, the Dow was in negative territory. So I wouldn't say that the Dow is in a really good place, but then again, it is only 30 stocks. It's 30 large cap stocks, which typically tend to be the companies that are able to be placed in most of these mutual funds that have large cap securities in them, along with many other securities from the S&P 500. They usually pay a decent dividend. They usually have consistency in their dividend as well as in their growth model. So that is something to monitor as we go forward for the rest of the year. With this being June, and June being half of the year, if on today's date the markets were to close, if today was December 31st, Bitcoin would have had an amazing year. Right now it's up 61%. The S&P is up 9. The 9 to maybe 9.5, depending on where it closed today. The NASDAQ was up 26%. So the NASDAQ, the S&P, and Bitcoin would have had the strongest of the years. In addition, the sectors that would have been some of the highest rated sectors for this particular year to date, would be information technology, consumer discretionary, and there's one more, communications. Those would have been the highest sectors, up by about 9.5%. All of the other 8 sectors would have been either down or would have been near flat. Materials, which is the core components for how we build things here, actually is flat on the year. However, infrastructure is only slightly down. Housing has had a big downturn related to the cost of materials, labor shortage, as well as inflation as a whole, and interest rates. Interest rates, as of right now, are still positioned between the 5 to 5.25% at the target rate window. That does mean that lending at this particular point has been restricted, but lending is not at its lowest level. So banks can still lend, but there's not the purest of incentives for them to continue to lend, just because inflation is so high, and also many investors don't necessarily want to borrow at high rates. So that is also something that propels the economy as it relates to business inventories and business growth, because as we all know, small businesses do drive the U.S. economy, and they are needed. Every town, even most corporations, did start off as small businesses. So we do still need to keep that window open for funding, because it's essentially how we fund commerce and capitalism here in the United States. But these are the things that are so far tracking on the year. The Federal Reserve is going to meet next week on June the 13th through the 14th. At that time, they will decide to hold or to move the rate. Honestly, at this point, with the S&P being up about 9 to 9.5% or more, and the NASDAQ being at 22%, if you were in fixed income, your portfolio would be somewhere between about 2 to 6%. That's not bad given last year we were down so much, but it is something to consider if that is decent for you as far as a return for the rest of this year. If your portfolio is not at 2 to 5% so far as a return, then this is the time to ask yourself if you should make changes. Let me see, what else am I thinking about? I think that's all that I have right now. I don't want to allow for all the business behind me to become so loud that you won't be able to hear me. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I will see you again soon. My name is Kyla P. Barnes, your financial chef and coach. My website is www.gingles.com. Oh, and another thing, right? I heard this quote, right? So I wanted to tell you this quote. Usually every video I do start with a quote, but I didn't get a chance to do that this video because I just dived into the data. But I am reading the book, The Alchemist, and the quote in there said, "It is one's personal destiny to discover their purpose. I really like that. And the other thing that I liked in The Alchemist is there was a quote that said, when you determine in life what you want, the universe will work curiously to make sure you discover or obtain that thing that you want. I really like that quote. The other quote that I heard that I thought was pretty cool was by Rick Ross. He said that the dream is free, but the hustle is so separate. He said that in his book, Boss Up. So that's all I have for you right now. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to hear from you, but if not, I'm just going to continue to just, be out and about, live my life, smile, try good food, get into conversations with amazing people whom I don't know, and just continue moving forward. And I hope you do the same. I hope you have a good summer, and I will talk to you again soon. You're going to let me get away with that? I thought I had some viewers out there that were really, really into this thing. I always share with you each episode how to use this information. So the best way to use this information is to reevaluate your own habits so far on the year. I'm going to put the ball down here. Literally, I put the ball down. But the best way to use the information in this particular video is to reevaluate your money habits. Where's your money going? How much are you spending it on? Can you reduce that amount? Another way to use the information in this video is to look at your savings. Because the Federal Reserve has consistently raised rates, we have found ourselves in a position to where you can choose where you want 5% to come from this year. It can either come from Bitcoin, as I mentioned in the previous video, going long the NASDAQ or an ETF, going long an ETF for the SPY or for the S&P, or any of the ETFs that track small cap. You can also find 5% in a certificate of deposit, hopefully one that's between 1 to maybe 2 or 3 years. Nothing really longer than that at this particular point. You can also find 5% in a treasury, a U.S. treasury, as well as in most bonds are paying over 4.16% for a 1 year. So that lets you know that when you go to look at your savings, when you go to look at where you consider your nest egg for your comfortability or your effort fund, as I mentioned in my book, to where you're like, this is my lump sum of cash. When you go to look at that amount, the benchmark to compare that to technically is 5% or more, because that is what the fixed income market is going to give you. So that's the best way to use this information. It's to evaluate your practices, evaluate your spending, evaluate your saving, as well as what your investing is yielding. Another thing to maybe even consider for this year is there are a few ETFs out there that track consumer discretionary, they track large cap, they track information technology, they track companies that only do streaming services. There are so many ETFs out there now, it is literally ridiculous. So if you find that there's a company you really like and you're like, I really don't have the money for it, consider fractionals or consider an ETF. Many ETFs can start anywhere between the price range of about $9 on the low end, all the way up to the high end of maybe $300 to $400, if not more than that. But know that there is always an opportunity for you to invest, and there's always a price point that you can afford. If someone tells you that there is not, that is someone whom I think you should back away from. You should wish them well and give them the deuces sign, because they are not there for your well-being. Again, my name is Kyla P. Barnes. I'm your financial chef and coach. Send me a message on my website, www.onegingles.com. Navigate over to the schedule appointment or even the contact us page, and I hope to hear from you really soon. Enjoy your summer. Live your life unapologetically, and I'll talk to you soon.